At the devil are we? Apparently, it's almost the end is nigh for Sean Diddy Combs' trial. Wonder how it's going to go. Let's have a look at the News Nation segment.
We are in week 7 and nearing the end of this blockbuster trial as the prosecution wraps up its racketeering case against Sean Diddy Combs. While we expect closing arguments to come later this week, the defense will not take nearly as long to make their case, and they may not even put on any witnesses.
Seriously? I was a bit spurious.
What does that tell us? And it appears from texts and events being testified to by a case agent today that timeline actually matters. How so? We will discuss. I'm criminal trial attorney Sarah Azari, and this is Serving Justice, where we're taking a deep dive daily into the criminal trial against Sean Diddy Combs. Joining me now are News Nation reporter Safia Sami Ali, who has been.
Is she reading the entire thing from a script? It just looked like she was completely reading everything from a script there.
Following this case closely since the beginning of trial, and News Nation field producer Tommy Cristaldi, who was inside the courthouse earlier today. Sophia
Christ, is anybody above the age of 30 there?
and Tommy, thanks for joining me. I'm going to start with Tommy first. Homeland Security Agent Joseph Cerciello,
God, she really is reading from the script.
I think is his last name, is the last witness the prosecution plans to call. He's been on the stand today. He showed the jury receipts for planes and hotel rooms, essentially flights and hotels, allegedly used for these sex parties, these things that were referred to throughout this trial as freakoffs, hotel nights, and wild king nights.
Still can't get over that freak-off, the name freak-off. Bizarre. Thing is, though, there's a couple of other videos that I've reacted to, and one was a male escort that basically had sex with Diddy's wife willingly. I mean, he was willing, but so was she. Whilst Diddy was in the corner, I don't think he was doing anything. He was just watching. I don't think he was, or anything. So, but yeah. But all the only things I've seen though is like people giving like witness testimony are people who were willing participants in things. I've not seen anything about the dark side of the trial yet.
Tommy, walk us through this evidence and why it matters and what the jury saw.
Sure. So it has been, this guy.
Obviously, the jury saw the sex tapes. I did a video on the sex tapes, which isn't good. I mean, there was an 18-year-old woman apparently on the jury, and she was forced to watch Diddy sex tapes. It's like watching porn in a room full of people, whilst one of the actors was actually there staring at you.
As a summary witness, and what that means is that he is summarizing the things that we have already heard about all throughout the trial and condensing them in such a way that the evidence is presented in a way that is easier to follow and the jury can put it, as you said, in order.
He really has got the millennial haircut right down to a T.
A big part of this, something that I think was really important to come out of his otherwise mostly mundane rehashing of events, was that we were able to see directly that at the same time that Sean Combs is texting Jane, we can do whatever you want to do tonight. We don't have to do this. What do you want to do? As he is sending those texts, he is also actively texting the agent or the manager or whoever it is at Cowboys for Angels, the escort service, and trying to set up an escort. So he's saying to Jane, on the one hand, whatever you want to do, we don't have to do that. I just want to see you. And meanwhile, at the exact same time, they put the text in chronological order, and we saw
God. Penny dropped. The penny dropped for her. So he was arranging for her to come over to watch Netflix and chill. The actual Netflix and chill, not the other connotation of that. Whilst setting up the Punisher. And if anyone's listening to this going, what the hell does he mean by the Punisher? I did another video, which I'll link in the corner now. Yeah. So I'm assuming that Combs was lining up a sex worker, knowing that he was going to coerce somebody into sex who thought it was just going to be a Netflix and chill kind of evening.
So essentially, He's duping her. It's like that fraud element of sex trafficking.
Yes.
By Jove, I think she's got it.
So,
Or
and that
it's
is
fraud or coercion. Like, yeah, you can do whatever you want, but I know it's going to be a freak off, so let me set it up.
right. He had no intention. I mean, the way that it comes across
What a freak off.
based on the texts and the order in which they were presented
Let's just call them coercive sex parties.
is that he had no intention of actually doing whatever she wanted to do. He had every intention of having a hotel night, and that's why he was getting his escort ready well before she said that that would work for her.
Well, Sophia, feel free to push back on me, both of you. But here's the thing. As a defense attorney, I go in and say, I just know these girls will ultimately do it. It's not that I have to force them to do it. They've always willingly done it. They were setting it up. Jane was making arrangements with escorts. She had her favorite escorts. So even though, of course, it's up to her ultimately whether she wants to or not, just because I'm setting it up doesn't mean I'm forcing her. It's because I know ultimately they're freaks. They want this just as much as I do.
And you can, I'm not justifying anything, but you can argue that if somebody said, okay, I'll do it without actually being really forced into it, then is that illegal? I mean, it's probably illegal because it's prostitution at the end of the day, but it's not, I don't know. From the witnesses that I've heard, I mean, when you heard about the million tubes of lube that apparently was in his house and some of the drugging and some of the potential victims and everything, but from the witnesses that I've seen, maybe they're just junk witnesses and not the actual proper witnesses. But it just seems like people who were willing to do these things. But now Diddy's been sort of accused of all these things, have come out and sort of gone, I supplied him drugs. I didn't want to do it, but I supplied him drugs. No, you were willingly supplying him drugs, and you probably testified to avoid prosecution. Or, yeah, I did clean up the sex scene the day after, but I felt like it was my job. Right, okay. If you didn't want to clean up sex scenes afterwards, go and get a different job. Or, clear evidence or whatever it is. And the Punisher says, yeah, I feel bad now. But he didn't feel bad then because he was having sex with Diddy's wife and she was willing to do it. It's only because of the trial and everything else that is going. If I knew that now, I wouldn't have done it. But again, he didn't feel like anything was wrong at the time because he was getting paid to have sex with a willing participant.
Well,
that's my rant over anyway.
I think that their cross-examination began this afternoon. And much like when we saw the summary witness who went through Cassie's testimony, again, we were presented with a lot of messages where Jane is reaching out to the escort by herself, independently of Sean Combs, or Jane is facilitating, here's when you're going to fly out to us. The thing is, with the example earlier where he is texting the agent, the manager, whoever, at the same time that he's telling her whatever you want to do, this was right after an occasion in which she said to him, I'm sick of this. I'm sick of doing this. She expressed in this particular instance, and I'm not saying that this happened every time, but in this instance, it was that time when she said to him, I'm not an animal, I'm not a porn star, and I'm sick of being treated as such.
I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong here, but didn't she ask the lady at the top left the question originally? And she just can't seem to get a word in edgeways. It's just these two.
And so...
But she's sitting there thinking, what the hell am I on here for?
Specifically, I think the fact that it was...
been like 4.5 minutes and she's not said a word yet.
At occasion when she was saying, I'm really actually fed up with this.
And apologies for continuously pausing, but I just wanted to explain that it's just after 7 o'clock in the morning and I've been up for a couple of hours and I really need my coffee.
And he was saying to her, I hear you. I just want to be with you. I love you. To then have the messages put into the timeline concurrent with his text to this other person, I think that was...
Well, I mean,
something that I was picking up on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that I've been saying to you guys, this is a very disjunctive prosecution, a little, like all these like predicate acts and things, but there's no tying them all together. Now we're seeing them get tied together. And the chronology matters because I think for the prosecution, they're trying to condense the timeline and show that these things were happening around the same time. The defense, of course, is trying to spread it apart by bringing in other text messages. So, Sophia, overall, the prosecution has tried to paint this picture that Combs used his company and celebrity to build an infrastructure, this criminal enterprise, for freakoffs, for
Is she going to get a word in now, or is he going to jump in?
his sexual gratification. It appears the defense attack is, I think, well underway. But how do you think the defense will challenge this strategy as they move closer to their case this week?
I think they will be staying the course. They're going to be doing what they've been doing so far, which is really pressing and hammering on consent.
Yeah.
Nothing was forced. There was no coercion.
It doesn't sound like it. It sounded to me like this Jane was getting pissed off. Pardon the language, but she was getting pissed off that she was turning up somewhere and he's like, right, okay, we're going to get freaky now on one of our freakoffs. But she kept turning up knowing that that was a possibility. Sounds like consent.
Coercion. These were all willing participants, and that nobody was forced to do anything they didn't want to do. And they've already been doing this through text messages, through voicemails, where Cassie and Jane are saying, I'm excited. I want to do this. I'm eager. They're trying to show that these were willing and eager participants, and that in certain cases, they initiated these events where you're calling an escort and saying, hey, I want to set this up. So what they're really going to try to hammer in here is that, albeit this is an alternative lifestyle that maybe people don't really get, there is nothing criminal about it in the context of the charges that the prosecution is bringing. And I mean, beyond that, yeah, we know, like Sarah, you said, yeah, he's an abuser. There's domestic violence, but
yeah, well, you can't avoid that. I mean, he was on tape beating his other half. You can't avoid that. Absolutely, he should be prosecuted for that. I just don't think you can talk about coercion in the same manner as sex trafficking in terms of unwilling people put into forced prostitution. It sounds to me like he was hiring escorts to have sex with people. They would turn up and going, oh, I don't really want to do this, but okay, I will. After a while, because maybe it was getting a little bit too much, but still, there's consent there.
Does that have to do with RICO? Does that have to do with sex trafficking?
And I still don't know where the 1,000 bottles of lube come into this.
And that's where I think the defense is really going to hammer in. No, it does not. Everybody in this were consenting adults.
And to your point, I think this sort of, obviously his drug addiction is a big deal for the defense, not only for sentencing, because
I shouldn't. Sorry. But if you've done bad things like beating your other half just because you're, addicted to drugs, it's not a defense. Shouldn't be a defense at all.
he will be convicted of the prostitution charge, no doubt. So it's sentencing in a federal sentencing, what we call 3553 factors are argued, which are mitigating factors and aggravating factors. Addiction is very much a mitigating factor that the court will consider when sentencing a defendant.
The thing is it classed as a felony or a misdemeanor? The fact that you hire a prostitute, which are escorts effectively, but they are prostitutes. If you hire one and they willingly have sex, yeah, it's illegal, but it's not. I don't think you could do serious jail time for that, right?
But I think the defense is also going to play that card in closing arguments to say that this was a guy who was struggling with addiction, and a lot of these things that he was doing under the influence, because as you saw throughout the course of this trial,
Tough shit.
The defense asked a lot of questions on cross-examination from witnesses about, did Mr. Combs appear to be under the influence of drugs at the time?
Shouldn't matter.
So I think they're going to use that. It's not a full defense by no means, but they're going to try to make him portray him as someone who
shouldn't be a defense at all.
Really, willfully doing these horrible things, and the blackmailing and the hollow threats that, of course, he never really carried out with the $20,000 he gave back to Cassie's mother and all that. Never really got anybody blacklisted or, nothing actually was done. But still, there were these threats, and he
That's what I mean. I mean, it was made out to be like the trial of the century. It was almost put on the same level as Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein. You got the Freakoffs, 1,000 bottles of lube, sex parties. You've got Ashton Kutcher and Diddy basically on camera with a 13-year-old actress or something, or a singer at the time, going, "Yeah, are you invited to the party?" And they were both looking dead excited about it. And you put it in that context, and you go, "Oh God, that doesn't look good, does it?" But from what I'm hearing, he's took drugs, tick. He's hired prostitutes, tick. He beat his other half and domestic abuse. I don't know if he's already been convicted of that or whether that's part of this trial. But people willing participants, you can't exactly, can't convict somebody for that, can you?
Just this petulant drug addict. I think the defense is going to argue that. But Tommy, we're hearing it, it should take a couple of days for the defense to wrap up their case. Remember that at some point, I think they said it's going to take 2 weeks. And I was like, wow, 2 weeks of witnesses. What is your sort of layperson? I rely on you as like, you're the jury, right?
2 weeks is nothing in a trial this big. I was in a trial for 2 weeks, and the entire evidence as a jury that we had to go through was folded that thick of cell phone, tower records to say, oh, this person was at this location at a specific time. And then when you looked at it, the evidence said, but they could have also been within like a half a mile radius. And you go, is that really putting them at that location? Especially when they had 3 known addresses in that area that they used to frequent. Oh, God. Yeah, there was other evidence, like, the fact that they were texting each other on non-encrypted phones, and one of them, I think, was wearing an ankle monitor that was in the vicinity of the shooting. God. But either way, yeah.
What is your layperson take on the defense's plan to wrap things up so quickly? Have you heard anything in court about what that strategy is all about?
Yeah, we've been discussing this a lot because the latest is that it sounds like they might not call any witnesses at all. It sounds like they're going to read some stuff into the record and then rest their case. And
I think the strategy there, and I'm not a lawyer, but I have seen episodes of Law and Order, so I'm an expert, I think the strategy there is they're just going to turn around and say, we don't need to present anything because what if the prosecution presented willing participants in having sex, or willing participants taking drugs, or escorts who were paid to be there who were willing participants. So they'll say, we don't need to have any rebuttal witnesses because what the prosecution is basically, we'll admit to prostitution charges, but what the prosecution have presented isn't really something that's worth defending, maybe?
To me, the way that I'm interpreting that is they believe that they have done a really good job at discrediting all of the prosecution's witnesses. They've weaponized some of the prosecution's own witnesses against them. You look at Jane's testimony, where by the end of it, we sat here thinking, wait, whose side is she on?
Yeah.
You look at some of these expert witnesses where, again, they present, or not expert witnesses, summary witnesses.
Yeah.
They present these summarized charts and lay things out very neatly. And then Tenny Garagos got in there and said, nope, actually, this time Cassie asked for it. And this time Cassie asked for it. And this time Cassie asked for it. And look, the big thing that I've been saying when discussing this in the overflow room and outside of court is that I think that everything that these women are saying should be believed. I think that they truly felt that what was happening to them, they had no say in it. However,
I don't know. It's like if my boss asked me to kick somebody in the stones. I feel like, I might lose my job here. But I'm not going to do it because I've still got that choice myself. And feeling coerced and having coercive behaviour, I suppose it's the same as cults, really. You might say, we was willing to be there, but ultimately it's a pattern of manipulation and behavior. Can you blame someone for basically the choices that others make? I don't know.
I think that what you have to consider is that they heard this, the jury heard this testimony weeks ago, some of it. Cassie was weeks ago at this point. The thing that they're going to take with them are the texts. And the texts say, yes, let's do this. Yes, I want this. If they are allowed to ask to hear the testimony again, they don't need to ask to see the text messages. They have those in front of them.
Right.
So for me, the thing is that the defense feels really confident in that they have used the prosecution's own witnesses against them. And in calling witnesses of their own, it would just open themselves up to cross-examination that could be equally aggressive. That's how I take it.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I agree. And I also think that, look, the idea that prosecutors bring in cherry-picked evidence and then we as defense lawyers bring in the context is not news to me, right? But I think what's interesting is that these text messages between Combs and his girlfriends are very detailed. These women are having full-on conversations about how they feel about this, and you went out with that person. I saw your picture on vacation with this. I mean, it's very detailed. And so to leave out, you know, in their testimony, say, well, I didn't say that. Well, the jury's going to be like, well, you said everything else. Why didn't you put that in text as well? You know, so there's also that.
Yeah. Maybe they've not helped themselves, or maybe it's and dare I say it, because I'm not going to say anything. Well, I'm not going to have an official opinion on it because I don't really know. But is there an element maybe of payday for some of these people? I'm not saying all of them, but you could turn around and say, "Oh, I was coerced and I was victimized and I didn't want to do any of these things," because if it comes to light that you were willing participants in the Freakoffs, you're having sex with prostitutes, it doesn't make you look good. So you frame yourself to be a victim. And I'm not saying that that's the case in this, but it's just one angle of maybe what could happen. The other side of it is that over a number of years, that maybe Combs was a master manipulator and manipulated people into these situations that it felt like they couldn't say no. I know that some people are in that mode, and maybe you target certain people who are easily malleable into those situations, but the truth will come out. The jury will vote one way or the other. I'm just going to leave that there, by the way. It goes on for another 5, 6, 7 minutes or so. But they're probably just going to be saying the same things over and over again. But yeah, it's a weird one. I don't actually know, from what I've seen testimony-wise, what Diddy's actually done wrong, apart from having sex with prostitutes, taking drugs, smashing up hotel rooms. Yeah, not good, but pay a fine, whatever it is. Recompense the hotel. Taking drugs, yeah, it's illegal, but were you supplying those drugs? You get a fine, maybe a misdemeanor or something. Hiring prostitutes, again, yeah, but they were willing participants. And if other people were willing participants that he flew in to have sex, then is that illegal for him? No. Maybe them for prostitute. Maybe they were facing prostitution charges. I don't know. It's a weird one. What do you think? Keep an eye on this. See you on the next one.